I want to look at the Lions, and let's compare what the Lions' new regime has been doing. They haven't been cashing in and trying to get that super player. They stayed away from Myles Garrett. Everybody in Detroit wanted that. The fastest way to go from very good to bad again is giving up massive capital to get one guy. And I really hope that Trajan is going to take a page out of Dan and Brad's book and just continue to assemble assets. Keep your money smart. Re-sign your own guys that you develop. I don't know what Trajan's going to do. I hope that he stands pat and he goes and uses the money that Weaver built in for him to take this team over with and goes and gets themselves a Naz Reid, who I would prefer at Miles Turner, but I think Naz Reid, he has piston all over him. Gritty guy that can hit, shoots 38, 39% from the outside. A big guy that can defend at the rim, defend on the perimeter, and has a gritty side to him. But I just keep looking at the Lions. And I've kind of seen Brad a little frustrated with Pistons or Lions fans this offseason.
What do you think of that?
I love it because they're all telling him how to do things and what he should be doing. And all that he's done is taking a completely terrible franchise and transform it. Not only by creating the culture, but this guy went 15-2 with a second-tier defense. Literally, his whole defense was gone. I'm seeing Lions fans mad that we're ranked number 6 in defense in the NFL right now, because we didn't get the edge rusher that everybody wanted. Look around at all of the last 20 years worth of Super Bowl champions. There are so few that have two guys that are doing double-digit sacks on the edge. It just doesn't happen. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They didn't have that.
But does that mean just because it hasn't happened, does that just mean that you don't need it? Does that just mean if there's an opportunity to improve that spot on your defensive line that you just don't do it because it hasn't been done before?
Well, I think that you can get lucky and you can draft two of those guys. But when you have Aiden Hutchinson, who's right up against an extension that's going to be big, big money, but now you bring in a Myles Garrett and you give away all of this future assets, and you have to sign him for a big, big budget thing too. I think that Dan and Brad understand that if you keep these guys that you draft on those rookie deals, you can continue to fit more and more talent on a full roster instead of positioning all in a few players and then having your second 26 players just not so good. This team is built top to bottom through the draft. You look at this kid, Ahmed Hassanain. This kid's going to be great. He's going to make everybody in Detroit forget about Myles Garrett, and he's a 6th-round pick. I mean, honestly, I'm looking at these.
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Listen, this cast of characters that they drafted this year.
A 6th-round pick going to make you forget about Myles Garrett.
But let's talk about Christian Mahogany. Mahogany should have been a 3rd or 4th-round pick, just like Mekhi Wingo. But he ends up slipping, and we get him in the 6th round. So when you take a look at going up to get Manu, those guys could have been the 3rd-round pick, and Manu could have been the 6th-round pick. You still get the same value. PFF rated the Lions draft as the 4th most valuable draft.
There's no question. I do believe that draft, they got really good football players to keep them good for a very long time. And I believe they're going to be competing for a Super Bowl like, 4 or 5 other teams in the NFL this year, maybe a couple more than that. But nonetheless, when you have an opportunity to improve an area of weakness on your team, I think it's incumbent upon everybody to take a look at that and see where you can get better and what you would need to give up. Big news today everywhere, and you're going to see it on all the national shows tonight and whenever you're watching, Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson has come out today and said that he has had 0 contact with the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a relationship that is completely strained. He used to have communication with the coaching staff. Now the coaches don't even talk to him anymore. Trey Hendrickson, in my opinion, is not going to be playing for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. He had a strong statement against the team, against the coaching staff, against the organization. There is no player in the NFL that has more sacks in the last 2 seasons. Not Max Crosby, not Myles Garrett, not Aiden Hutchinson, not Nick Bosa, not Joey Bosa, not nobody more than Trey Hendrickson. 35 sacks. Next closest guy is 30.
Wow.
He's got 5 more sacks over the last 2 seasons than anybody else in the National Football League. And Cincinnati didn't want to pay him.
Bengal's going to Bengal.
They cost themselves with Jamar Chase. They cost themselves with Joe Burrow. They cost themselves
T. Higgins.
with T. Higgins. There's no doubt about that. But again, it's like, okay, you see this player in Trey Hendrickson. He is so done with that organization. And to some extent, maybe the organization is done with him.
What would you trade for him?
Well, that's the question. That's what you have to weigh out. Who are you willing to give up to get Trey Hendrickson? Are you willing to give up re-signing Jamison Williams and Brian Branch? Are you willing to, for a lot of people the answer would be no, but that might be something that now, Jamison Williams, no, because they've got 2 wide receivers over there. I'm just throwing out
sure.
Guys that you're not going to be able to pay if you were to sign Trey Hendrickson. And the one thing about Trey Hendrickson is this. He's on a good team. He's not looking to go to a contender. He is looking to get paid.
You think?
Yes.
After being a Bengal his whole career, he doesn't want to.
Made it to the Super Bowl.
Doesn't he want a ring?
He absolutely does. But I think first and foremost, he wants to get paid. He wants a payday. That's what I think.
So for me, when Braylon and I go back and forth on the super trades, he brings up the A.J. Brown. Now, the A.J. Brown to me is not a super trade because that was a number 18 pick that the Philadelphia Eagles had. They probably would have targeted a wide receiver, but they wanted the sure thing. Tennessee was ready to part ways. They get that 18 pick and then a 3rd rounder. If you can do something like that, or before this season starts, you give up next year's 1st-round pick for a Trey Hendrickson and maybe a 3rd rounder or something like that, count me in. But when you start throwing around these trades where it's 2 first-rounders or a 1st, a 2nd, and then a 3rd or a 4th as well, I just don't understand why Lions fans haven't caught on to what Dan and Brad are doing here. Those aren't the moves that these guys have made. At no point in their DNA and what we've seen have they been willing to do that. Now, they'll move up, but they're not going to give away a bunch of different assets for a guy that they've never had in their clubhouse. And I come back to this all the time that I think Lions fans underestimate the conversation that was had between the Fords and Spielman when they were starting the selection process before anybody was hired. Yes, Super Bowl was obviously a topic. But winning 10 games and be a perennial playoff team and changing the culture of the worst cultured losing franchise in the NFL, that was their number one thing. And they are absolutely unwilling to risk that culture. Look at these guys that they brought in. Ahmed Hassanein. This guy's saying that he will give his life on the field for them. You look at Tesla, he's like, I know I wanted to be in Detroit. I was so happy when I ended up there. The Tyreek Williams, he was so ecstatic to be here. The most beautiful scumbag of all time, Tate Ratledge. I mean, these guys, the characters
I love
that
them
they
all.
brought in, yes.
I love them all, and I totally understand what you're saying. And, outside of what happened today with Hendrickson, I think we're all comfortable with going into the season in 2025. I just want to read the quote to you because I have it earlier. This is a statement from Trey Hendrickson to ESPN. Quote, no communication has taken place between my camp and the organization post-draft. The offers prior to the draft did not reflect the vision we shared and were promised last offseason if I continued to play at a high level. Coaches are aware of these past conversations. Rather than using collaboration to get us to the point to bring me home to the team, they, in all caps, are no longer communicating. I have been eagerly awaiting a resolution of this situation, but that's hard to do when there is no discussion and an evident lack of interest in reaching mutual goals. That's Trey Hendrickson's statement today to ESPN. And I think when you have a disgruntled player like that, somebody of that caliber, 35 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Only TJ Watt is number 2 with 30.5 sacks. Danielle Hunter, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons. That's who's on that list, and Trey Hendrickson is number 1. So, again, when you have that guy out there, I do think it is incumbent upon your organization to take a look at it.
Absolutely. But, everything that you were reading about his experience with the Bengals right now, I remember that. That was what it was to be a Lions fan.
No doubt.
And bad communication, guys that didn't want to be here, and that culture's just been completely changed. To your point, Trey Hendrickson, for all intents and purposes, seems like a Dan Campbell guy.
Yeah.
I think he would assimilate and fit in here perfectly. But again, it comes down to the cost. I think that, when you're looking at it last year at the trade deadline, it would have been more money. Now at this point, the Bengals have lost a lot of leverage just by this news coming out today. So I think that it's something that Dan and Brad will circle back to, and I think that we'll see what happens. It sounds like he's not going to be in a Bengals uniform, like you said, but I don't see him coming here. Everything that I've heard, the narrative, the spin that I've heard from Brad is like, I got you one in the 6th round. I got you defensive end then. Is that okay?
Right.
Because, again, you look at the depth that they have assembled on this defensive line for the last couple of years. Yes, I know you got Marcus Davenport, an oft-injured guy, but if he can stay healthy with the guys that you've put in the middle, I mean, Tyleek Williams is one of the most productive defensive linemen in college over the last 2 years. This guy is proven. So when you put a guy in the middle like that, it's going to make your edges better.
You know where Trey Hendrickson is going to end up, right? You do know.
Kansas City.
Philadelphia.
Oh,
Howie Roseman's going to Howie Roseman's going to find a way to get him.
I hate that.
Howie Roseman, absolutely. Speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, Anson, it was revealed earlier today that it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles Thursday, September 4th in the NFL season opener. A lot of people around here were wanting, expecting, hoping that it would be the Lions at Eagles because so many people wanted to see Lions-Eagles in the NFC Championship game a year ago. Instead, it's the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, at Philadelphia. And there was so
formerly America's team.
I agree with you. So many choices, too. You've got the L.A. Rams, the Denver Broncos, the Detroit Lions, the Washington Commanders. And you go with the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys name, does it still resonate? I mean, does it matter?
No, I mean, they're the Cowgirls in my head at this point.
I
can't even say Cowboys. Now, they just made the trade. They bring in George Pickens to pair with CeeDee Lamb. You get a healthy Dak Prescott back. But this feels like the NFL trying to revive the interest in the Cowboys. But at the same point, I mean, the Lions have been getting a lot of national games. They've been, started 2 years ago, the first game of the season. So you can't put them in there every year.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put them in there every year.
No, like Maz says, once they got the Hall of Fame game this year, in the preseason, you knew it wasn't going to happen.
Are we going to Canton for that?
We could. Probably could if you want to.
I'd be down.
Chargers going to host the Chiefs in Week 1 in Brazil. I just don't know why they got to do that stuff. It is for the Chargers? Oh, yeah, because it'll be everybody in Kansas City. Well, the stadium in Brazil is going to be packed full of Chiefs fans and Patrick Mahomes fans anyway. But
have you seen the beaches in Brazil?
No, I don't think. Remember last year they weren't allowed to go and leave the complex?
I would not allow the players to go to those beaches because they'd never come home.
Right?
I can only imagine.
Right.
I can only imagine. The scenery has to be amazing.
Google it.
Pretty interesting. Jets host the Broncos in London in Week 6. Aaron Glenn actually was at the podium today speaking to the media, and he talked about how Dan Campbell continued, time and time again to put Aaron Glenn in positions to become a head coach, where he met with Jameson Williams every morning at 7:30, as the defensive coordinator meeting with one of the offensive guys. He had pointed that out today, and as he looks back now, Campbell was preparing Glenn all throughout to be a head coach, and that is something that is so cool, and it just raises, I think, the Dan Campbell stature even more when you just know he's taking care of his guys, and by his guys, I'm talking about his coaching staff.
And as a mentor, a great mentor, you want your disciples to be better than you and to surpass you. I got a hot take. The Chicago Bears, everybody in town thought last year that they were going to be winning their division. And it's laughable to me. But now this year, you remember when Dan Snyder put together all those free agent classes for the Washington Redskins back when they were the Redskins, and everybody's like, these guys are going to win it. When has that ever worked?
Doesn't.
And so I'm looking at Ben Johnson, the former quality control guy, that realistically I think that he lost some games for us getting too cute.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to when Dan Campbell took over play calling, we had one of the top offenses and he was winning games. I know that the Bears on paper are in a better position than the Jets are right now.
Sure.
But I think that after Catfish Caleb reveals himself to not be the generational quarterback yet again, I think he's the wrong guy for Ben Johnson's system. And after this year, when they don't win 10 games and all of a sudden the Chicago fans start going after Ben Johnson, start going after Catfish Caleb, you're going to look at AG and what he is as a man, as a leader of men. And it doesn't matter that on paper that the Jets aren't as good. He will get them to the playoffs faster than the Bears will get there.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm very high on Aaron Glenn in New York. My only question is about Justin Fields at quarterback. I like Justin Fields. When you stack up those quarterbacks in the AFC, I mean, he's not even in the top 10.
Well, let's talk about an opportunity missed. You can't tell me that Caleb Williams was better than Justin Fields as a Bears quarterback. You just can't. If you move that number 1 pick, think about what the Bears would have.
I have said that. I was steadfast in that.
So let's talk about that now again when we're talking about Giannis, when we're reflecting on the fact that we didn't get Myles Garrett.
All right, I've got my crack research team here have some trades I want to ask you about.
Oh, please.